Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the GRC and Cybersecurity podcast. In today's episode in the Leaders in Cyber and Risk series, we've got a very special guest, Holly Foxcroft. Hi Holly, can you first introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about what your company does?
So I'm Holly Foxcroft. I work for Stott and May Consulting, the sister company to Stott and May Professional Search and Talent Management. So Stott and May Consulting, we offer information security, cyber security, cloud security services, as well as end-to-end transformation projects, kind of leading security-led initiatives. And I have joined the company to lead quite an important and exciting initiative, which is building out a neurodiversity awareness and consulting packaging that offers accreditation for employers to better understand neurodiversity, as well as leading research-led initiatives in industry.
Fantastic. So before we go any further, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do outside of work, so our listeners can know a little bit more?
Yes, so I'm a mum first. I have two wonderful children. I run a tight ship because I also have two dogs, two cats, and you can mainly find me trackside of an athletics track where I'm shouting my son to run faster. And I live in just outside of Petersfield in the South Downs. So that teamed with the career, it keeps me kind of busy.
Fantastic. So I know you briefly mentioned your role. So can you just talk about kind of what is your role, what you're currently doing, but also give the listeners a bit of an understanding of your career pathway, how you got into security?
Yeah, it's really interesting because my role is very much wearing two hats. So leading the research-led initiatives in understanding neurodiversity and neurodivergence in cybersecurity, and then offering the training and awareness consulting packages for employers, which comes with its own accreditation for being neuro-inclusive, universal by design. How I fell into that is a very interesting path because putting the two together in itself is interesting. So my transition into cyber started, I suppose, in the Royal Navy, and I joined in electrical warfare, which naturally migrated into the cyber landscape. Unfortunately, it ended in a medical discharge for me. And at the time, I became a mum, which in itself is navigating a difficult scenario, I guess. And as well as those challenges, I also my son has autism and ADHD, so that's where we start to see the two coming together. And in my time, I became his lead special education needs coordinator. Writing his policies, giving a better understanding as a whole for a neurodivergent brain's needs, and then supporting obviously my family. I went into recruiting, and that's when I started to put cybersecurity and neurodivergence together, and understanding that a lot of the individuals I was actually speaking to came across as having a neurodivergent condition. Or they were quite open with me. And I kind of started the momentum of addressing the cyber skills gap, that we are actually looking at untapped talent here, but it needs to be supported in the right way. All the while, I've always had a love for cybersecurity and continued that. I then led initiatives in increasing academic pursuits, college level for cybersecurity. Building out cybersecurity apprenticeships. And then I conducted my own academic research in neurodiversity and cybercrime, which looked at the vulnerabilities that neurodiverse individuals face being online, and how that can lead to them engaging in cybercrime. And my role now has kind of, again, put the two together, and understanding that there is a lot of research needed and lacking in understanding neurodivergent conditions and cybersecurity. Can it fill the cybersecurity skills gap? It's certainly something we can look at, but we need to address it in the right way. It isn't that we can just employ people who have a neurodivergent condition or identify as having a neurodivergent condition without the proper support. So my role here at Stott and May Consulting is to help employers to be neuro-inclusive by design, which means that changing the culture, the environment, stereotyping and challenging bias, and making it inclusive for everybody. And then we can start looking at the recruitment piece and whether it can address the cybersecurity skills gap once that part's in order.
Yeah, something you interested said you started to obviously notice because of your experience that people were either telling you or you picked up on tendencies that you may have gone towards thinking they're neurodiverse. Were people struggling? Did they feel that they didn't have the right, I guess, support in place to go into organizations? Was that something that you were seeing a lot in the people you're working with?
It was. What I noticed is gaps in employment, or they didn't follow that traditional route into cybersecurity, if there is a traditional route, dare I say. However, they didn't sometimes follow that academic route.
Yeah.
Or they could relay to me they had the skills needed, but didn't have the qualifications as such. And that's because inherently the route of academia can sometimes be unsupportive for neurodivergent individuals. And having, being very personable and sharing my own story, people felt comfortable to share that with me.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. One of the other things that I wondered if it's quite interesting was there, like, did you notice people were changing jobs a lot because like they weren't getting the support they needed? And I guess seeing that quite a lot. How did you? Is this how you got into thinking actually we need to do something about this, just to give these people the ability to educate employers how to support people, but also get people into work?
This is kind of a twofold answer, really. So the first one is, yes, they found it difficult, or they were recovering from burnout or autistic fatigue. And this isn't to be confused with regular employment burnout. Autistic fatigue and neurodivergent burnout can come from a multitude of different avenues. And unfortunately, employment is a huge contributor to that. So they weren't being supported. They weren't in turn disclosing that they had a condition that can be supported, because there is still this stigma that people don't want to disclose because they can see already they wouldn't be supported. There aren't internal mentorship programs, etc. And the second part, which I think is really interesting, is a lot of individuals who have cyber or transferable skills or skills within cybersecurity didn't work in cybersecurity, or they'd never had. It was literally a hobby. It was something they did for fun. And you see that when we did an employment day with the Cybersecurity Skills Challenge, and we brought together employers, and we ran initiatives for the individuals to take part in.
Yeah.
And they were all quite young individuals. However, some of them were of an employable age. And the skills were all there. And yet none of them, or I can't say none of them, but very little of them were actually pursuing a career in cybersecurity. And this goes back to why I first led the initiatives in bringing cybersecurity into further education at college level. because unfortunately there isn't much in our in academia to support other than a computer science. So
yeah, yeah, we've seen it ourselves that there's obviously a lot of people who come into security in many different pathways, and one of the things we've got is like looking at mentor programs, college and school graduates now, school leavers.
yeah,
And I think you've got to look at different pathways, because there is computer science, which they might want to go in as from a development background. There are some universities that have specialist degrees. There's a few that do them, and there's more appearing to as time goes on. But it does make it hard when there's not a, like you say, a non-traditional academic background to get into it. So can you talk to me, how would a company go about being more neurodiverse? What are the things that they need to think about?
First and foremost, I would like to say nobody is expecting people or employers to be experts in neurodiverse conditions. There are people who spend their whole careers doing that. But what we must focus on is individual need. Not putting an individual next to their diagnosis and giving them support on a diagnosis. It very much has to focus on individual need. A person should never be, we've hired one person with autism, so your needs must be the same. So to be more neuro-inclusive, I would first say to get support, to understand how to be neuro-inclusive. To get that support, speak to a neurodivergent person. So that can be internal, or you can engage with myself. And there are other charities that offer support for employers. However, it mustn't just be on one initiative. So it can't just focus on how to be neuro-inclusive recruiting. It needs to look internal, and you need to see where that support needs to be in place, not just for the individual, but for how a team then understand neurodivergent and neurominority individuals. It's very much a team-led initiative, not just focused on one person. And going back to what you said about mentorships, cybersecurity mentorships, it's the same with neurodiversity, building an internal mentorship program of support for people and individuals who are neurodivergent or who have a relationship with neurodivergent conditions. As we have 1 in 5 people who are neurodivergent, we all have a relationship or know someone who has a neurodivergent condition, from autism through to dyslexia.
Yeah, and like I say, it's about building, I guess, that culture and framework. It's not just, we want to recruit people. It's actually, how do we onboard people, make sure they are given, I guess, the support they need to be successful in their role and within the company. And that's not just make sure we're inclusive in recruitment, it's make sure that these people are successful and we give them a framework to work within. So a little bit like moving back onto your role. So who do you report to? How many people are working with your team? And I guess just so the listeners know, is this a space you're seeing a lot of other organisations, a lot of other people starting to look into? Is it something that you're seeing growing a lot over the last few years?
Okay, so I work for the Stott and May Consulting side, which is smaller to our sister company. I report into our CEO. And we have in Stott and May Consulting across the board with our many services, and we engage with bespoke individuals with cybersecurity, obviously the cybersecurity-led initiatives. And however, there's a team of 10 or so in the consulting side. However, that obviously the engagement does change. Neurodiversity is growing at a phenomenal rate. It seems like it's the new buzzword, and that actually concerns me as a neurodivergent individual, that it's not going to be addressed in the right way. Like there's a lot of talk around the recruitment piece. I mean, how long have we been talking about the cybersecurity skills gap and how to fill that?
You feel like it's all you hear every single week, isn't it? It's like, again, if you look at LinkedIn, all you ever see is like, we've not got enough people in cyber. We've not got enough people in cyber. And then you see the job spec and you're like, I can see why.
Absolutely. I mean, I actually go against that. I think there are enough people. We're just not recognizing those people's skills. We're asking for too much. And of course, what I'm going to say is we're not being neuro-inclusive. And so, yeah, I see it growing a lot because a lot of people are talking about it. Naturally, diversity, equity and inclusion is a subject we should kick up a fuss about. And we are, our corporate responsibility is to make sure that we are addressing the need of needing to be neuro-inclusive, particularly as more people are now finding out that they have been misdiagnosed and they're getting diagnosed later on in life, and they need their needs met. So it's definitely creating more awareness. However, that awareness needs to come from the right background and from the right noise. There are some amazing initiatives happening and there's some amazing research being conducted to make sure that what is being said is appropriate, relatable, and understood. However, it needs to also include the neurodivergent community. It's nothing about us without us.
Yeah.
And nobody knows a neurodivergent condition than a neurodivergent individual. However, you can only say on your own experiences sometimes. So it's about collectively understanding what the needs are and why the needs need to be met, and then helping people understand by challenging bias, using the correct terminology, and then applying what skills need or what changes need to be made. It's not going to happen overnight, as much as we would all like that, but we are moving positively in the right direction.
It's about, I guess, like you said there, like it's not going to happen overnight. Employees learn, but they need to react when things don't work. So make sure that you're learning from what's been said, that you're not just taking a very static approach to this of actually, if this is something that you as an organization want to do, believe in, it's not like this, like you say, this one size fits all. This is what we do. Actually, we're just hiring for, there's lots of, for, like you say, ESG reasons that people may be saying that they're doing that, but like, it's actually, this is an ongoing thing. This is something that needs to evolve, and we need to make sure we're supporting these people throughout. So a little bit, what type of engagements are you working on at the moment? And I think the second bit is, how have you seen, I guess, because this is a space that, again, I'm new to, the wants and needs of your customers, employers change. Have you seen this as a place that's really picking up that they're looking into?
Yes. Again, corporate responsibility. We have to be inclusive and we have to meet an individual's needs. If we don't engage with neurodiversity as a whole, which includes neurotypical and neurodivergent, neurominority, then we're at a severe disadvantage. Cybersecurity by nature is diverse, and our best asset and our best tool towards that is by engaging in a neurodiverse workforce. So it's within an employer's best interest, and because there is so much movement, more people are actually putting their hands up and saying, my needs need to be met. Employers are also quite cautious because we are talking of a medical condition in what some people identify as having a medical condition. There are two modes of disability, the social and medical model. A lot of neurodivergent individuals follow that they are disabled because of social construction and it's actually society that has made us disabled. and not to perform at our best. And of course, employers want us to perform. And where there is a heavy presence of neurodivergent individuals in technology, particularly cybersecurity, it's definitely within their best interest because of, again, let's go back to the cybersecurity skills gap.
Yeah.
They want to be able to retain that workforce. Recruitment is expensive. So
yeah, I can attest to that this year. It's been a very expensive, and it is extremely expensive to recruit, and salaries for people who work in cyber are only going to continue to go up. I think retention of staff has become, not that it wasn't important before, but people are seeing it as like, wow, this is a lot more than maybe what we were spending 2 to 3 years ago.
Absolutely. So making sure that you are neuro-inclusive, not only are you then widening your talent pool and looking at different candidates, but by being neuro-inclusive, your retention piece is going to be much better. You're going to be able to retain that workforce, understand and get the most out of your workforce as well, and particularly in cyber.
One of the things that you said that I thought was very interesting is that and it gives you also different perspectives. I think especially with cyber, where it's so important to have different people thinking in different ways, because I think if you're hiring people who think in the same way over and over again, you're not going to find different ways to try and essentially break things or get into things, right? And having people from different backgrounds, different understandings, different learning pathways means that they've not all come through the same cookie cutter approach. And it means that you've got a much more, I would say, comprehensive plan to assurance, because you've got different backgrounds who don't all think in the same way. And I think sometimes employers forget about that as a benefit in itself, which is the different skills and people really can make a huge difference. So where do you spend most of your time currently, and what are the key priorities that you're working on at the moment?
I'm fairly new to Stott and May, so my key priorities at the moment are building our content and our training and awareness packages, and our accreditation. So that's kept me rather busy. And building our training and awareness packages. I've been engaging with cybersecurity industry to understand what the need is. I've been engaging with cybersecurity leaders and CISOs to find out their understanding of neurodivergent conditions. What challenges have they faced? And then I have also been engaging with academia and other research-led initiatives to actually build our research piece, to build on understanding neurodivergent conditions in cybersecurity. Can it help towards the cybersecurity skills gap? And building my content and training awareness piece on that. And then I've been engaging, starting to engage with employers to help understand how I can support them to be more neuro-inclusive and how to build those internal mentorships and build the recruitment and retention around being neuro-inclusive and ongoing. And that will be surrounding the accreditation of being neuro-inclusive, universal by design.
Fantastic. So I guess then we move on to what do you find that's really working for your clients at the moment?
In uncomfortable conversations that they can hold their hands up and be comfortable to say, we want to be able to engage with understanding neurodiverse or neurodivergent conditions and our neurodivergent workforce or potential workforce, but we don't know how to do it. We don't know where we are, what we're doing, and everybody's talking about it, but nobody quite understands. So what's working is creating almost a Chatham House forum to say, let's make sure that you are using the right terminology, what has or hasn't worked, where changes need to be made, almost a training needs a gap analysis of an organization or a team where there is a presence, and creating positive disclosure. So by making it neuro-inclusive and making it universal by design, a person can voice their needs of having a condition, or they can just voice their needs as, this is what I need. And it isn't so much of a barrier to being employed. What else is working is, to be honest, it is mainly of creating that space of, say what you want without offending me, and then I'll correct you. It's fine.
Yeah. And we had a on-site training with some of our managers yesterday, talking about protected characteristics, making sure that if this is disclosed to you, make sure you understand what that is, because people just don't know, or like weren't aware of it. And look, to be fair, it's not something in my career that was particularly brought to the thing of, like, there was lots of hiring practices and other things, but neurodiversity was not something that was ever like made a thing of to you. And it, from this conversation, from between our, I guess, the conversations we've had lead up to this, I've done a lot of looking at it and you're going, actually, there's a really huge opportunity here for employers, where I know we've repeated it a few times, is there is an opportunity here for, first of all, for improved retention of staff, understand staff's wants and needs that you may not already know. And on top of that, like, have a program where you can tap into additional people and create a framework for them to be successful. I mean, and it obviously sounds really easy saying that, and there's a lot of steps on the way to doing that. But I think a lot of employers are missing a trick here if this is not something that they want to go and, well, that they're not already doing. So I know we've said what's working. What are the biggest challenges that you're having working with clients?
I would say, because neurodivergent conditions aren't visible, so the problem isn't there, and a lot of challenging bias and stereotyping, and kind of making people aware that their thoughts are harmful and negative. And that's why it's really important to actually challenge and change that bias of understanding. Unfortunately, media has given us false representation of what a neurodivergent condition can look like, particularly with hackers. If you're a white male with autism, suddenly you're the world's greatest hacker. Thank you, Mr. Robot, for that. So through media representation or misunderstanding, through stereotyping, our biggest challenge is actually changing that and changing the understanding into a positive reflection of neurodivergent conditions.
Fantastic. So if you looked at the next 2 years, what are the biggest concerns that you have in this space?
That the term neurodiversity is going to be fatigued, and where people are looking to address it very quickly without understanding or engaging with neurodivergent individuals themselves, I think it won't be addressed. So what the momentum that we're creating needs to then, your foot then can't come off the gas because it's sorted. You can't make a universal environment. You know, people leave positions, new people come in. It is a consistent piece, and that's part of our service offering, in that it isn't just a one-size-fits-all training piece. It is further engagement, and my biggest concern is the recruitment only led initiatives, when you're not looking at how to further support, first, who's neurodivergent in your company already, that they're not being supported, and yet you're looking to onboard people without giving them the proper support or understanding. You're offering a disservice to neurodivergent individuals by just looking at how to onboard them.
Yeah, it's got to be ongoing training and awareness for everyone, and then obviously ongoing support for the individuals to make sure that you're doing the right things. So I guess, look, I know this question, often people talk about COVID, but I guess what are the lessons learned from the last 2 years of COVID? How did that affect, I guess, the wants and needs of neurodiverse people? Did you see a lot of challenges during this period with remote working?
Finally, our reasonable adjustments don't seem so reasonable anymore. I mean, again, it's very much individual need.
Yeah.
And for some people, working in a office environment can be really challenging. And those challenges can come from several areas. It can be noisy, there can be hot desking, bright lights.
Yeah.
So COVID really was a support in understanding what those reasonable adjustments can look like. And I think in cybersecurity as well, it's helped us understand from a more personal perspective what our own taking on our own home equipment and things. But for neurodivergent working, yeah, it has taught us that our needs can be met, and there is a way. Suddenly overnight we weren't forced, and that should have happened a long time ago. But this comes with not understanding what the reasonable adjustments for neurodivergent individuals can look like as well.
So can you talk me through what skills do you think make a great information security professional? I mean, you've worked in recruitment, you're obviously in this research space. What do you think are the key skills?
My piece of advice would be to look outside of security and start to look at the social sciences, start to look at cognitive understanding in different areas. So when I say social sciences, look at sociology and criminology, because understanding those different risk areas and different risk factors, having a wider understanding of human behavior, means that they aren't coming from just a one side love and appreciation for cybersecurity, because that can be learned. Whereas looking at different avenues, even maybe a legal background, but I am a keen influencer of looking towards the social sciences when looking to build security teams.
Yeah, and I think if you look at some of the social engineering and some of the very big hacks that have happened recently, is at least a starting point to get credentials.
Yeah,
it's still a very strong way of getting your foot in the door, and that is just training and make people aware that this can happen and they understand it, and that is a huge area of risk for organizations. So I know we spoke a lot about your work, but how would you measure success in your role? Like, what does success look like to you?
Seeing the change I want to see in society. So by me making those changes, I can measure success. By seeing that people are wanting to fully engage in being neuro-inclusive, universal by design, not just attending a talk, but actually wanting to change, challenging that bias and making it going forward standard practice, that they are universal. It's just inclusive for every person, because being neuro-inclusive doesn't disadvantage anyone. It enables everybody and gives everybody that opportunity to succeed and flourish in an environment. I like to say making a difference. I really do have a passion in changing diversity and including diversity and being and making things more inclusive, not just on the neurodiverse front, but across the board. Of course, gender, racial equality, socioeconomic backgrounds as well, because not everybody gets the same opportunity. and because of our route into cybersecurity can be really expensive. I think that's another area that we really kind of need to look at, how our socioeconomic status can maybe affect people coming into our industry.
Yeah, there's so many certifications and all kinds of things that people personally like. I think they're useful, but like I think experience and skills are more what I would look for. Obviously, there's a bare minimum of specific roles that you need to do, but ultimately, if they're important and it's the right person, I think employers should be footing the bill for some of that stuff.
Is there a more valuable skill than curiosity? And that's naturally.
I think if you're doing security, I think curiosity and that willingness to just keep going and testing and drilling in until you're happy with an answer, or you feel like that is one of the most important things. Because if you've got that mindset of like, how do I get around this, or how do I make sure this is secure, the rest of the stuff can be taught within reason, as long as they've got the aptitude to want to do it, right? But look, we've taken in so many people from done non-technical degrees and are now scripting very easily. And there's even like, we've had a ex-footballer, who dropped out at 18. He's now joined our security testing teams. So and he had no technical background. And if people want to learn this stuff, they can do it. It's just having the wants and needs. So if you could have one wish that you could solve in security, what would it be?
I'm going to answer this as a mum, and I am going to answer that the Internet of Things going into the Internet of Toys really frightens me as a mum and having an understanding of security threats. I have seen my son's peers wearing a smartwatch that you can buy on Voucher, and they have been proven that they are so insecure, and they have cameras that can be accessed. We've looked at baby monitors being hacked, and as technology is now going younger and younger, with interfaces such as cameras, online engagement, the Internet of Toys and Internet of Things, as a parent, petrifies me. But also that we are raising digital citizens from a very young age, and their digital citizenship is going to be really important to them when they come to get a job. So
I'm completely not aware of what that means, and people understanding like you have this huge digital footprint that you probably want to have like Facebook's after was basically the end of my university, so you've not really had, and if you had, you probably did a bit of tidying up, but people aren't going to have that. They've got God knows what social media platform of all kinds of things that's just there. And nobody's making them aware of this.
Nobody's making them aware, but nobody understands the vulnerabilities of individuals being online in terms of cybersecurity. There is, and as rightly there should be, lots of understanding on Internet Safer Day and online harms in that way. But the vulnerabilities surrounding cybersecurity and engagement via tools such as scripting or writing code, or what is breaking the Computer Misuse Act. If you look at the age of a cybercrime offender, it's a lot lower than you would expect it to be. But where does that understanding and that awareness come from?
Yeah, and it's probably even at school making them aware. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure like the Computer Misuse Act and all of the things that they could get in trouble for is not made clear to people, and it's not continuously made clear. Because you can quite easily go online, download some software from watching YouTube for a few minutes, start monitoring a network, what's going on, and quite easily get yourself into quite a lot of trouble. So Holly, it's been a pleasure. One of the things that we always like to do is ask if there's any other security leaders or people that you think would be interesting for us to interview. Is there anyone that you'd like to suggest that we should try and get on this podcast?
There are many, and I would love to sit here and list all of the people who inspire me and I aspire to be. I get kind of following on from my diversity piece. I would love to say Jane Franklin. I think the work that she's doing to support women in cybersecurity and elevate women in cybersecurity is phenomenal. And her creation of the online platform, The Source, to help women further their career, but also maintain a mental state and understanding of being a working female and the challenges that comes with as well. I think her work is phenomenal. Yeah.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Holly, for being with us today. We'll put your LinkedIn profile in the notes, so feel free to reach out to Holly. Is there anywhere else that you would like that you have people reach out to you from professional capacity?
Yeah, I've got my Twitter, and I can share an email, which if anyone would like to reach out and talk about some engagement or understanding more on neurodiversity, or further research in this area, please reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.